Okay, I'm not gonna lie, being completely honest here, I only got the idea for this video after watching Bilbzy's own about what a roster for a DC versus Marvel game would be. He said what changes we would make and who we would switch out should be like in a response, so it gave me the idea to make this video. While I thought this video was great, really well done and thought out, as a huge comic book nerd, I, of course, would make a different character list. You should totally check out his video and his breakdown on who should be in the game's initial roster, should one ever exist. Before I start, I would make the same stipulations as his video did, because of all the rumors about NetherRealm Studios, the video game developers behind Mortal Kombat and Injustice, are supposedly making a new game. The studio we're assuming to be making this Marvel vs. DC game is NetherRealm. Capcom would never get the license for DC, considering WB is a video game publisher. It's far more conceivable that, with how Marvel is licensing out their IP to video game developers and how WB already publishes the LEGO Marvel games, that NetherRealm, a studio underneath WB, would be the ones to make this already unlikely game. So, with NetherRealm in mind, I would be hard-pressed to believe that they would make a launch roster for this game with anything more than 40 characters, which is still pretty high for them, I think. That would be 20 for DC and Marvel each. Premier skins that NetherRealm introduced into Injustice 2 will be considered both from a business standpoint and from what I think they can certainly make happen with Marvel over DC characters or DC characters skinned over Marvel characters if they ever make this game. With that said, I'd like to preface my list with 2 points of contention that I thought Bilbzy didn't take. I think for Marvel and DC both, there should be 14 heroes and 6 villains each to kind of balance things out, especially for the story. Because NetherRealm is fantastic at making stories for their fighting games. So, also that means anti-heroes will take slots in one or the other hero or villain depending on which side they lean more towards. Like, Deadpool leans more towards hero, so he would take up a hero slot. But Harley Quinn is more of a villain, at least in my opinion, so I would say she leans more towards taking a villain spot. Because that's any spoilers on who's on my list. I'll say which premier skins could be for each character when I get to them, and I won't just be making characters I want to see. This list is supposed to be a balanced list. It's supposed to be balanced to what will work best to reach the maximum appeal for the game and create the most balanced roster, while also saying what would be the most realistic. I'm also going to go a few at a time, especially as we knock out the obvious choices, because there are a lot of Injustice characters who should show up and have to, and those on Marvel who are pretty much need to be there because of the MCU and its popularity. I would also like to stipulate that this could be its own game or Injustice 3, but either way, I don't think this game should be a direct sequel to the Injustice-verse where Superman is bad. I think it should be and probably would take place using a normal DC universe like the one Injustice Batman calls to for help, against a normalized Marvel universe. I do believe they should both lean far more towards the comics universes and not the movies like Injustice did with DC. That way the story and the rosters don't suffer when they're based on the movies. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite is an excellent example of why you don't want to do this, but that doesn't mean I don't think it would happen. So that doesn't mean adaptations won't affect the roster in its entirety, because popularity does decide it, but more so to prove that they're popular enough to take the spot. The idea isn't to pick characters that match the movies or TV shows, but characters who are more popular than others because of the movies and TV shows. This list is more than just a wish list. This is who I think would be in it, should be in it, and will be in it, to make it fair to their audiences in a balanced game. The first 5 for DC are Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, and Green Lantern. There's no way there's a DC fighting game and these 5 aren't in it. They are, without question, the 5 biggest heroes in DC, with the only competition being sidekicks or alternate versions of these 5 characters. And I guess Harley Quinn as a villain, but again, no one should be surprised or really argue that these characters won't be in here. That would be ridiculous. The more interesting thing would be with which characters would be their premier skins, skins that don't necessarily change any movesets, but actually change the character who's standing there, the voice actor, and the intro dialogue, because the character personalities may be different, but their fighting styles are not. So for Batman, it could be Batman Beyond and Batwoman. Batman Beyond has been a skin in the first Injustice game, and I'm really surprised that he wasn't in the second one. And so it would just be adding dialogue and a little bit more to the visuals. Batwoman maybe be a bit harder because she's physically a bit different, because she's a woman, but she fights the same, so I think it would just be one of the more in-depth makeovers they've ever done. But it should just be a makeover. For Superman, it's already pretty interesting because aside from old carryovers like Bizarro, he has the first skin that would be Marvel over DC, the Sentry. While Sentry's not a popular, well-known hero outside of Marvel Comics, he is one of many Marvel copycats for Superman, and is an interesting character in how he's a split personality and suffers from mental illness, which would make him an interesting character in the story, or at least in enters conversations. It would also introduce him more to audiences, so I think that would help. Hyperion would be a good one too, but I personally think he's so bland and unlikable, which is something Sentry has way over him, so I think he'd be a little bit more of a pointless mirror skin. For Wonder Woman, it would really be Donna Troy and Wonder Girl who are worth mentioning. For Donna Troy, you might not even have to change voice actors because she's sometimes just a clone of some... I shouldn't say clone, it's kind of inaccurate, but you know what DC fans know what I mean. So, there's also for the Flash, which would have his old Reverse Flash and Jay Garrick skins, which also saves the DC from having to need a Flash villain if you have the Reverse Flash skin. Though the most important premier skin would have to be Quicksilver. He is truly popular enough that people would know him and know him to be a part of the story, but he's not important enough to need his own slot. While Flash is faster, in this game it really wouldn't matter. Green Lantern, of course, would have other Green Lantern skins. I really hope they make John Stewart the lead Lantern this time if they do make this game. I've always found him to be the best and most interesting Lantern, but even if they make him the premier skin to have Hal Jordan again, I think it would be fine. This time though, they should have more skins, like Jessica Cruz, who's gained more notoriety and appeal. It would make some really good intro dialogue. They could also have Sinestro because he really shouldn't have been his own character in the first Injustice, but his dialogue and place in the story would add another needed villain. Maybe like even add more Earth Lanterns in later on. But having Sinestro would be a really good success, just having another villain, which is a game that's probably going to be low on villains, just to kind of both Marvel and DC. The first 5 for Marvel are as obvious as the ones for DC. Is Spider-Man, Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, and the Hulk. You have Marvel's most popular hero in Spider-Man, arguably the only superhero with a popularity against the sex rival, Batman. So much so to the point that it doesn't matter that Sony owns him, Marvel still makes movies for him. So for the premier skin, obviously Miles Morales. There's not a lot of diversity in the base roster, and with Into the Spider-Verse and the newly announced Spider-Man game that was announced while I was writing this video, Miles Morales hasn't been more popular. Making a Ben Reilly Scarlet Spider, Spider-Man Noir, and or Spider-Man 2099 would be incredibly awesome premier skins too. Iron Man is the premier character of the MCU. There isn't much to say about him though. I can't really think of a premier skin outside of War Machine and Rescue. Everything else would just be all color changes or alternate Iron Man suits. And Captain America is another given for obvious reasons. They could have a Winter Soldier as Bucky, or Bucky as Cap. I'm not sure how they reference him, because I was never big in Captain America. They also have a Falcon skin, like the Falcon Captain America, only the Falcon version just can't fly. Thor rounds out the Marvel's answer to DC's Trinity, and he's the only premier skins I can think of for him would be Beta Ray Bill and Jane Foster. They would play the same, but it would be awesome skins, and that would just be cool to play as. Sadly, like Wonder Woman, the big 3 of Marvel and Spider-Man himself don't really have any interesting alternate versions other than their side characters. But that is not true with the Hulk. The Green Goliath not only makes for one of the roster's largest characters, he's an obvious tank and grappler, but he is also the first character with obvious premier skin where DC is going to be skinned over a Marvel character. Of course, the different color Hulks, particularly Red Hulk, will make good premier skins, but Solomon Grundy would too. Yes, he has been a playable character before in Injustice 1, but he was axed with the sequel. So a worthwhile way to bring him back and have another villain for the story would be to make him a premier skin for the Hulk. Now, this next batch of 5 DC characters are characters who are almost easy to confirm because they've either been in both Injustice games and or served an integral part to the story, giving them a leg up. It's not that their story relevance would affect this game's story, but simply their comfortability with NetherRealm's writers, and whom they clearly like putting into their stories. I just say most likely because there is a small chance that they won't make it, but it would be there's not a 100% chance. It's like these guys are like 9 out of 10 chance of being in the game. Maybe with some being a bit of a 7 or an 8 out of 10. And these 5 are Aquaman, Cyborg, Green Arrow, Shazam, Supergirl, and Catwoman. Oh my bad, that's 6 characters. That's not 5, but still. Aquaman is the only character who has a DCU movie that has surpassed $1 billion and has a sequel on the way. So it's weird to say, but Aquaman is bankable and incredibly popular right now. Not to mention he doesn't fight like any other characters in DC. It's strange because most of the main Justice Leaguers have sidekicks who fight like them, but not Aquaman. Aquaman's sidekicks and side characters fight like Mira, another side character, so he's a versatile fighting game character. The only premiere skin that I would think be worthwhile for him is Namor, who actually predates Aquaman, but he fights similarly enough that it wouldn't be worth a new character. And Namor is still as popular and well known that he has to be a premiere skin, if anything. But he would be a cool one because of how much a villain he would be. I mean, I hate Namor as a hero, but he can be a good villain, so another villain for the story. And Cyborg may not be getting his own movie anytime soon if he ever does, but he's been made into a mainstay for the Justice League at this point. And he always serves as a representative for the Teen Titans. Not to mention, DC has essentially made him the token black guy of the Justice League. I hate to say it, but it's true. It helps that Cyborg's fighting style is unique enough, and he has that popularity from the Teen Titans, so he's just going to hang around as that character people only play as a story mode because of how essential he is mechanically, rather than narratively or popularity-wise. Green Arrow is like Aquaman. He's coming off a generally well-received and popular adaptation in his show Arrow. And while the show recently ended, the shows on CW are still called the Arrowverse, which just gives him a cachet over other heroes. Not to forget that he plays a key role in the Injustice comics and as the everyman side character in both Injustice games. More than that, I really feel like NetherRealm just likes him that much, and Hawkeye would make a premiere skin for him, not the other way around. You don't need two archers, and while Hawkeye has been in the movies, he's been short-staffed in most of them. Hell, he's best remembered for being short-staffed. And Green Arrow is remembered for having a show that's been on the air for nearly a decade. Shazam is one of the most likelies that I'm less confident in. Shazam has the cachet of being the first Captain Marvel and having that rivalry, I can't say that word for some reason, with Marvel's own Captain Marvel, and he's a sequel to his own movie Over the Horizon. But his movie didn't smash at the box office, and his popularity isn't soaring, it's maintaining. Shazam is both carried and weighed down by his adaptations in a way other heroes aren't. But I think he's a character that people not only want back into the story, he's got more name recognition than a lot of other characters who can take his place. And he carries more emotional weight against any hero he may fight. It would be a great story moment for any Marvel character to fight him and realize they're fighting a child. That would work both for comedic effect and dramatic effect if they beat him. And again, of the DC 6 most likelies, Supergirl was the hardest one to put on this list. She held such importance in Injustice 2 story that I feel like NetherRealm or DC or WB is a lot riding on her. There's the show, there's a supposed movie coming out, but then again, Supergirl is the female version of Superman. She plays differently from him in Injustice 2. She was one of my early mains, and I'm only fairly confident that this will get her a spot. She's the one who I thought was like a 7 out of 10 chance. I think what it is that makes me put her above the others is the story context Supergirl serves. Her place pretty high in the meta across many tiers also, and her popularity in popular media all helps. Catwoman, on the other hand, is arguably likely enough to be an easy confirmation. She's been in both Injustice games, she's been adapted to nearly every incarnation of Batman on the big screen, but I see her place in a DC versus Marvel game to be confirmed more so for her place in the meta than anything. She's constantly ranked high in skill on tier lists in the community, both for Injustice 1 and 2. She's one of those characters who's ubiquitous in a special way. It also helps that she could also have a premiere skin for Black Cat, a popular Spider-Man character who's a copycat of Selina, who I admittedly like better, but still. Catwoman is just a mainstay in DC period, who's being pushed everywhere, and unlike Harley Quinn, no one ever complains about her overstaying her welcome, except for maybe some characters themselves. I have 5 most likelies for Marvel, and I promise I counted right this time. There are characters who just missed easy confirmation for one of 2 reasons. I'm either unsure of how Marvel is with these characters who aren't in the movies, aka the X-Men, or they just weren't as ubiquitous as the first 5. The first 5 are the characters who show up in the announcement trailer. The most likely are reveals along the way, with an itty-bitty small chance of getting shafted. They're like the 9 out of 10s likely chances. Those 5 are Wolverine, Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Deadpool, and Doctor Strange. Wolverine really should be an easy confirmation. Just like he should have been in the cover, he should have been on the cover of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. It's not just a travesty of a game, but on the goddamn cover, they didn't have Wolverine. Wolverine is one of the best Marvel characters for a video game, let alone a fighting game. But with the way Marvel treats X-Men and video games, I'm not sure if he'll make it. They're finally starting to treat him well again in the comics, him and the rest of the X-Men. But I always have that fear. Wolverine is a no-brainer who deserves better. NetherRealm can help him by giving him an X-23 premiere skin, preferably one where she has her own Wolverine suit. But again, I'm not sure about him because of the way they treat him. He's like a 7 out of 10. But he should have been like an easy confirmation. And Black Panther, though, he's not hard to see at all. I'm honestly 100% sure we're going to see Black Panther in this game. He's Marvel's premier black character, the first Marvel characters to make $1 billion with their solo origin movie. And he has a unique fighting style made for video games. He should have been Marvel vs. Capcom sooner. I think the first one he was in was Infinite, and one of the few things Infinite did right was having him. I just don't see him in the announcement trailer before Marvel's first spy. I would describe Captain Marvel much the same way as Black Panther. Despite how long Black Widow has been in the public eye, Captain Marvel is Marvel's premier female character. She's one of the strongest visually and mechanically versatile. She's popular and she makes bank. She's going to be in it, but I'd be as surprised to see her among the first revealed characters like I was with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Deadpool, like Wolverine, is a question of how Marvel wants to treat the X-Men. Honestly, Deadpool's as popular as anyone I've stated to be so far, considered most likely by far, if not more so. It's just how Marvel treats the X-Men. With Deadpool, though, what gives him a leg up even above Wolverine are the premier skins he has. Unlike Namor to Aquaman or Quicksilver to Flash, Deadpool is far more popular than his DC counterpart, despite his DC counterpart being first. Deathstroke may have been in the first game, but his mechanics could use a redesign. And as long as Deadpool's fighting style isn't as wacky as his conversations, it should be a great matchup, honestly. Honestly, if NetherRealm remembers that the Red Hood also has magical swords he can summon, he can be a premier skin for Deadpool too. Premier skins might just make Deadpool a top priority above others on his level. Now, Doctor Strange is honestly the only Marvel character that I struggle to place as a most likely fighter, and a character with a good chance. He has a pretty consistent place in the Marvel Universe, but his popularity is nothing special, which is best shown by how long it took for his movie to get a sequel announced. The thing Doctor Strange has going for him is renewed interest after Endgame and his sequel announcement. But most importantly, the easy premier skins in having the Scarlet Witch, a Marvel character who could arguably have a spot, and a decent premier skin in Doctor Fate, whose build in Injustice 2 could just make Doctor Strange easy to make. So, I don't know, that's why I think Doctor Strange has a most likely chance. He's a solid 7 out of 10 chance. For DC, there are only 2 characters who I think have a pretty good chance, but could easily see themselves left out of the game. Black Canary and Nightwing/Robin. Black Canary has appeared in so many places, adapted so many times to film and television, but she's never been the main star. Even in the comics, her solo adventures never last so long, but she's always considered a key and respected component of every team she's on. She also serves as one of the fellow few mid-sized reversal grapple characters on the roster, so she's a good place mechanically. Her place in DC is just not cemented enough that another character couldn't come and take her place. Now, Robin is arguably as well and as popular as any character in DC confirmed. But the fact that he's a sidekick and a derivative sidekick no less hurts his chances immensely. Whether it's as Nightwing as his own character over Robin, or the two combined to play as Dick, Damian, or Tim, he just doesn't have a gameplay or story reason to warrant his place. I could be proven wrong. That the popularity and ubiquity of Robin confirms that at least one has to have a spot on the team. But I wonder at what point does Robin eventually just get relegated to being a premier skin for Batman, especially in a game where every slot counts. Now, Marvel's pretty likely are 3 characters that help to add some representation for underrepresented teams in the Marvel Universe, and add gameplay diversity. Storm, Rocket Raccoon, and Black Widow each serve to work mechanically different to represent another superhero team, but also have characters who can serve their purpose equally. With Storm being the choice over Jean Grey and Cyclops to join Wolverine and Deadpool in representing the X-Men is because of her history in fighting games. She's a classic character to put on your Marvel vs. Capcom team. Her powers lend themselves creatively to video games, not to mention that she's one of the most recognizable and easy to understand X-Men. She has the respect and trust in the universe of many Marvel characters, and is a clear paragon in the story. As popular as she is though, she's not incredibly exciting of a choice, and again, she's an X-Men. The same can be said for Rocket Raccoon, partnered with Groot. Together as one fighting game character, they serve as the sole representative for the Guardians of the Galaxy. There are surprisingly few gun users on this list, and Rocket is the only one who relies on a gun over all other weapons. Having Groot work with him only makes this 2-in-1 character that much more mechanically special, filling the role of Swamp Thing in Injustice 2. But as popular as the Guardians are in the movies, Rocket and Groot are the two who transcend, and make for a fun, easier choice over Star-Lord and Gamora, who would be far more generic characters to play as. Black Widow would serve as the antithesis to Black Canary. She is the only regular-sized grappler from Marvel, and she has the honor of being the first and only female superhero in the MCU for a long time. She fights differently from other melee grapplers, with brand recognition few other female superheroes have in DC or Marvel, but she's not even Marvel's premier female character, and she's not different enough that there aren't many other female characters who would make for a far more interesting character slot. She's really only pretty likely for this reason. She's still better than Hawkeye, who should be nothing more than a premier character. Or premier skin character, I should say, not a premier character. He would never be a premier character. Now, for the diversity / weird picks, that's not diverse as in like racial, but as in like gameplay diversity. I only have one weird pick for DC and Marvel each, both to add some mechanic diversity among the fighters, with the added twist that they may be a character that hasn't been tackled in a fighting game before, or at least not memorably. I think NetherRealm will really want to tackle characters they and no one else have with each new game based on another property, and these two would do that while also presenting a space represented on the roster. John Constantine, who is rumored to almost be in Injustice 2, would represent the Magic in DC, which is actually missing from my list. And then Mr. Fantastic to represent the Fantastic Four, Marvel's first family. John Constantine, as I said, was rumored to be in Injustice 2 for being arguably as popular a Magic user as Zatanna or Dr. Fate. Ever since he spun out of Swamp Thing's comic, Constantine has had this slow crawl towards the top of DC. He's incredibly close to becoming top of the beat-list characters, with a chance of becoming an A-lister, and DC proves that they agree with this, with how they push him into their most recent animated efforts. Honestly, the least interesting thing about him is how he fights, but I think NetherRealm could make him into some kind of interestingly magical brawler to fit his scrappy style. He's a fan favorite, and he's only going to get more popular the longer it takes for this metaphorical fighting game to happen. Mr. Fantastic, on the other hand, is in the opposite corner. He's a part of Marvel's first family, the head of the family even. Everyone knows the Fantastic Four. Maybe not each of his 4 members, but they'll always have a place in comics. While I could choose to put the Human Torch or Invisible Woman on here, I do personally like them better as characters. Mr. Fantastic is probably the most recognizable, and his powers would make for one of the most unique fighters on the team. Again, letting him take the place of Swamp Thing, if Groot would not. Not to forget, that is one of the prevailing minds of the Marvel Universe. Mr. Fantastic has story relevance that other members of the Fantastic Four don't have. And the Fantastic Four deserve better than to be short-staffed entirely from the roster. The thing, if really necessary, could easily be a premier skin for the Hulk, or an assist to Mr. Fantastic. Now, we go on to the villains, which is when we start going into like easy confirmations again. I gave both DC and Marvel 6 slots, and that popularity of some characters and their copycats affect who I did think would be guarantees on this metaphorical roster. But for DC, there's only 3 easy confirmations, and those 3 are the Joker, Harley Quinn, and Darkseid. I can honestly explain Joker and Harley Quinn in the same breath. These 2 characters are so absurdly bankable, it's unbelievable. Joker with his own solo movie making $1 billion and getting an Oscar, going so far as to guest star in Mortal Kombat and get shoehorned into Injustice 2 despite being dead. He's just a character who's too well known, too popular, and too synonymous with villainy to be left out. Not to mention that narrative possibilities of him meeting Marvel heroes and villains is just through the roof. And much of the same can be said for Harley Quinn. Where Joker made his money in movies, Harley Quinn destroys in the merchandising market, rivaling Batman and Spider-Man. She's always hit a home with women, even though those who don't like superheroes for having an experience they can relate to, people like her. And honestly, she has a really good character design that attracts many people. She's an A-list character. It's just debatable whether she's an A-list anti-hero or an A-list villain. But based on her placement here, you can see where she falls with me. There isn't going to be a DC fighting game where Harley Quinn isn't in it for a long time. But with Darkseid, half of his easy confirmation here on the list is because Thanos is most definitely going to be in it. And the other half is for everywhere Darkseid is going to appear in, like the Snyder Cut. And honestly, it seems like every DC animated series so far. They're not going to have Marvel's biggest bad and not have DC's. He probably will even get put into the story so he can fight Marvel heroes in place of Thanos, or so he can fight Thanos himself. Maybe even combine, because that's something video games would do. Darkseid is just too perfect for the story and synergy so there's really not that many reasons not to have him. But I don't think he'd be a premier skin because he does not fight like Thanos, considering Thanos isn't a god. He uses a tool, which is the Infinity Gauntlet. I'm not sure if they would give him the Infinity Gauntlet or not. But if there is a premier skin to do with Darkseid, it would probably be having Apocalypse done over Darkseid, like Apocalypse being the X-Men villain. He'd be a perfect premier skin because not only would it bring in more X-Men villains, I think those of you wondering how Apocalypse could be seen using Darkseid's power are actually not like... I don't think it'd be that hard to put Apocalypse over Darkseid. Like, I ask you this. What are Apocalypse's powers even? They change every time he appears, and he has new ones all the time. It's not a big deal to give him flight and laser eyes, so he's probably had them both at some point before if he doesn't have them now. So Apocalypse would make a great premier skin for Darkseid. It would have another X-Men villain, which we would desperately need for this roster. And Apocalypse is cool, right? Like, he deserves more than that crappy movie. There are more Marvel villains that I can say are easy confirmations than DC, mainly because DC has a higher quantity of quality villains than Marvel does, so Marvel has few that they consistently focus on in adaptations and in comics themselves. Luckily more so than the heroes, the villains make for far more diverse playstyles. These four are Loki, Thanos, Doctor Doom, and Venom. Loki will always have the honor of bringing the Avengers together, not only in film but in the comic books. He's one of the most recognizable Marvel villains ever, and while that has come from his overexposure for the past decade, and the comics make him a lot more like his film counterpart, Loki, for better or for worse, has a guaranteed place in this game. It helps that his illusions-based technique would make for a pretty rad character to play as. And Thanos? Thanos has always been Marvel's answer to Darkseid, literally being based off of him. Like, the guy who created Thanos admitted that he just copied Darkseid. But he may be one of the Plane Spiders if he doesn't get the Infinity Gauntlet, and one of the most broken characters if he does. But we just spent 10 years watching movies build up to him. He's an icon among villains now. He's probably going to be in every Marvel fighting game from now on. Doctor Doom, though? While he has a bad strip of movie appearances, Doctor Doom is undeniably Marvel's best villain. And he has been for years. He has his integral place in the Marvel Universe to rival Thanos, in that he's ground level enough to always be good for regular story arcs, and big enough to serve as the villain for events. He's one of the few characters along with Spider-Man who Marvel did not hamstring after not having the movie rights to him. And there's a reason for that. He's the pinnacle of villainy for Marvel. He's been the catalyst for some of Marvel's best stories and characters. It would be shocking for him to not be in this game. I almost made him a most likely because he wasn't in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, but I feel as if his exclusion in that game is one of the biggest mistakes Marvel wouldn't want to carry over should a DC vs. Marvel game ever exist. Venom is the most popular and well-known arch-nemesis of Spider-Man, Marvel's biggest hero. Like Batman's massive popularity fuels Joker's and Harley Quinn's, Spider-Man's does Venom. Venom, like Joker, also has had his own massively successful movie, and like Harley Quinn, he kills it in merchandise. People know who Venom is, and his design is iconic. He probably has an even better chance of being put in this game than Doctor Doom, and the only reason I could see them not putting Venom in at launch is because of how frightening his character design is. Hell, Sony even made a movie about him without him being in the MCU, and they still let Venom be added into Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. At worst, Venom is the first DLC character that they announced ahead of time with how popular and important he is, and if they wanted to, they can add a fat Carnage premier skin. I see Carnage being saved for DLC if he ever does get added. There are two DC villains who I think are likely, but have a decent chance of getting shafted. Their chances of getting into the game are higher than not, and these two are Lex Luthor and Black Adam. Lex Luthor shouldn't be a surprise. He is literally the original longest-running supervillain to the original longest-running superhero in Superman. The reason he's not an easy confirmation is because of how he would play. NetherRealm put him in Injustice 1, and he wasn't used all that much because they didn't figure out how he would be best lended to combat. Not to mention he died, so he couldn't even continue in the story. The big threat to Lex Luthor being his own character is Iron Man. Luthor can so easily be a premier skin for Iron Man, and be a perfect combatant for it. The fact that there's a decent sized chance that NetherRealm does this instead of trying to make their own model work is a real threat to Lex Luthor. And that and Lex Luthor has been banking on being Superman's arch nemesis and off of old adaptations for years. It has been a while since he has been relevant outside of the comics compared to easy confirmations for DC villains. Now, Black Adam may seem strange, might even kill some of my street cred with this video, but hear me. Black Adam could technically be a Shazam premiere skin, being that they have the same powers. Black Adam, though, made it in Injustice 2, where Shazam didn't even get a premiere skin. Don't say that it was because Shazam was dead, because Joker was too, and they brought him back as a full character. So the fact that Shazam was dead and not brought back like Lex Luthor also wasn't, there's more to make it seem like Black Adam will get the spot over Lex Luthor. Let's also not forget that Black Adam is getting a movie starring The Rock, along with the fact that this character has been, for decades, on the rise in DC Comics, climbing the ladder to B-lister with sights on being an A-list villain. So Black Adam has reason to be in this game for much the same reason as John Constantine too. But more than that, the biggest reason I think Black Adam is likely to be on the roster for a DC vs. Marvel fighting game is because it's being made by NetherRealm. Black Adam is a tournament regular in Injustice 1 and 2. Professionals use him a lot, and I honestly believe that's what guaranteed his spot in Injustice 2. Esports and competition can't be understated for a fighting game, and when Black Adam is as popular in them as he is, he has to get a consideration for it. Essentially, I think he's likely for the same reason I think Catwoman is likely. It's just too good. There is honestly only one villain for Marvel that falls under the likely category, and I originally had him under as an easy confirmation, but after great thought I had to change it. It's Magneto. It's sad to say, and I don't want to repeat myself about Marvel's treatment of the X-Men again, but I think it could seriously hamper him. He's probably Marvel's best villain, second only to Doctor Doom with the stories he cultivates. Then there are his powers over magnetism that make him special amongst his roster. And, well, Magneto has been an A-list Marvel villain for years, with a claim of superiority over many of DC's villains. But being that he's an X-Men character, I can only say he's likely, maybe even most likely, but not confirmed. And that's kind of sad. The last two characters on the roster are the boss villains. They're the catalyst for the story and the two worlds colliding. They're honestly the ones who would likely even refuse to serve as the final boss of the story and serve as the hard arcade boss for both DC and Marvel. I almost thought they considered Darkseid and Thanos as these boss villains, but I think with how those two villains are joining the average lexicon, it would be too obvious. I also don't think NetherRealm wants to repeat things so closely to the failed Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe game, where Darkseid was a boss villain, so I think they'll want to do something different. The boss characters need to be similar. They don't need to be that popular though. They just need to fit a physical mold in the story and gameplay more than anything. That's how we see Galactus and Death as the final bosses in Marvel vs. Capcom series. Certain characters fit this mold. So for a DC vs. Marvel fighting game, I truly think the boss villains will be the Anti-Monitor and Galactus. The Anti-Monitor just finished as the main villains for CW's Crisis on Infinite Earths, and pretty much started the comic book events as we know it. Galactus is the most popular Marvel villain who can stand up to him. I would be shocked if the boss villains were different. More than that, I wouldn't be surprised if they were just skins for one character, considering how similar their movesets would be. They may not even be playable, honestly, bringing the playable character roster up to 38, or down to 38, but that wouldn't be shocking for a fighting game at all. These are two characters who are cataclysmic threats worthy of bringing DC and Marvel together, and if it were anyone else, I honestly think people would feel gypped. I don't think it can be anyone else. Overall, I think this is a balanced list of heroes and villains. There are characters on here who I still struggle over and who I may completely be wrong about, should this game ever truly exist, but I think it's accurate enough to realism. I think the only thing I was too optimistic about was the premiere skins, because I seriously doubt they would add as many as I suggested, especially not at launch. But a specific few like Hawkeye, Quicksilver, Deathstroke, and Namor are just too obvious to not be the first ones on NetherRealm's mind should they make this game. It has been a while since I did an opinion piece for video games, and if this video does well, I'll do more, but I'll never do games that aren't related to comic books anywhere outside of the podcast and Let's Plays. The reviews and essays are for comic books. That's what I started with. That's what I'll keep doing. Who knows, maybe NetherRealm will announce a DC vs. Marvel game soon, or maybe Injustice 3, and I'll do a video on it. Either one is probably more likely than Rocksteady or WB announcing their game at this fucking point. Just announce a new Arkham game already. Like, God. WB is ridiculous at how they refuse to announce games they're over-teasing. Like, first world problems. But still, I think this game has a possible chance. I really want it to exist, and I think most people do too. it would be a great game in NetherRealm's hands.